o'clock. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for the special meeting, the Lafayette Township Board of Trustees, June 23rd, 6 p.m. Roll call.
Kittle here.
Allow here.
Rolly here. If I could have everybody stand for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alright, so we just have the two items on the agenda for tonight, for the special meeting. The tax budget, we're working on the tax budget for both Lafayette Township and for the fire district for 2027. I think we put them in township fire district order. Might be easier if you guys, do you care? I think the fire district might be a little bit, well, just fewer funds to go through. I don't know if it's necessarily easier, but might be just a little bit cleaner if we wanna start there. I don't know what your thoughts are.
That's fine with me.
Okay. Nick, I don't know if you wanna kind of run point on that since it's your department,
Oh, so
or
that's why you wanted to go fire.
I'm okay either way. I mean, let me just pull up, cause Sherry had sent everything in an Excel spreadsheet. I guess my thoughts on it were to start. We're gonna work on the fire district side of things first. Maybe the cleanest way to do it is to just start with the bond fund. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Principal and interest, well, interest payment in June, principal and interest payment in July.
December.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Right?
December, sorry. Yeah, I don't know why I was thinking July would make no sense. So, it's a little bit smaller. So, we'd have tax collection fees, just kind of staying consistent with this past year. Levy's gonna collect roughly around the same amount, I'd say, $7,500 in tax collection fees. 403 is gonna be the principal payment. 30,851.10 are the two interest payments. So total appropriated for Fund 3101 would be 441,351.10. I guess not appropriated, but budgeted.
So you're gonna stay with everything basically where it's at? Like,
Well, those are, the principal, the interest payments are a little bit smaller
okay,
next year than they were this past year.
But the principal goes up.
This year, we had appropriated,
394 in principal.
yeah, well, that's a good point. The principal payment was about $10,000 less, $9,000 less. And the interest payments were roughly $10,000 more. So that's why they, all in all, work out to be the same. If you look, this year, the interest payments on that note were $40,661.70. Next year, they're $30,851. So, yeah, the last year we appropriated $442,161.70. This year's payments will be $441,351.10. The reason I wanted to start here, and I don't know how it works for, how you wanna explain it to the county, Sherry, but with where we're projected to start next year, the bond fund will have about $660,000 in it. Tax collections next year, on par with what they are this year, since the levy's pretty level, should be around $423,97, which will give us a little over $1 million in the account. We'll end next year with roughly $650. The reason I bring that up is because next December, the payoff on the note will be $836. So for another $192,000, which we will have in the budget, because we don't have to use, the bond levy funds have to be used for the bond.
Right.
But other funds could be as well. So, you know, we don't necessarily have to make a decision tonight, depending on how we wanna do the tax budget, but I think we should explain that the reason that we have significant carryover and accumulated balances in that account is so that we have the option to pay the bond off next year, retire it a little bit early, we'll save, I wanna say it's $25,000 roughly in interest the following year, plus it'll come off the tax rolls, the residents won't have to pay, like 27 would be the last year that we potentially have to collect that. And if I'm not mistaken, the original note ran through the end of 29.
It does, yeah.
So we'd be paying that off, so yeah, you have it up, what are the last 2 years interest, I think it's total like
Interest-
30?
Yeah, interest is, total of just over 30,000, so 10,408 twice in 2028, and then 5266.
Okay, so yeah, so just a little over $30,000. So, you know, depending on when we talk about the rest of the fire budget, if we keep on par next year with what we've spent this year to run the department, we're gonna start 2028 with roughly $2 million. You know, so, well, actually, I take that back, it'll be 1.5 that would be in the general fund, cause the bond fund, we potentially use to pay it off. But I guess my point is, even with the money that we set aside for the ambulance that's been ordered, we're kinda in that position, so I guess the reason I bring it up is not necessarily because I'm looking for the board to make a decision tonight on doing that, as much as we wanna make sure we communicate to the budget commission and to the county auditor that we need to collect that levy in full this year to even have that option. Otherwise, what they may do is look at the levy, the bond levy being authorized for the next 3 years, and they could just say, hey,
Reduce
we're gonna reduce it for each of the next 3 years.
Yeah.
The plus side to that is it will reduce the resident's tax bill in the short term,
Right.
but we carry that note for 3 more years. We pay an extra $30,000 in interest,
Right.
and ultimately, again, you know, we collect that levy, even though it would be a smaller amount, it would be collected for the next 3 years when we could potentially retire that. So, Sherry, I don't know what the best way to maybe make a note of that to the auditor is, or if they'll even look at that closely at it, cause it's not like there's a huge
They normally don't
carryover in
look
there.
at that close, I mean, I could put it in the notes when I email her everything and just put the explanation of why we're carrying that.
Okay. So, I think, you know, that's kinda where I'm at on the bond fund.
So what are you saying you're gonna get in for your general property taxes then? 'Cause
I
that's not what you
estimated
fill
those
out.
at about 423, 977.40. That's about a 3.5% growth over this year because of, even though they target the same dollar amount, we've had additional building over the last year. So as more valuation comes into the tax base, it winds up over collecting by a little bit. I think we've seen that each of the last couple of years that, you know, when the auditor's office estimates what's coming in, it winds up collecting a little bit more than that. And that's part of the reason why we've been able to accumulate additional balances. I also think we're probably a little bit low on the estimate of what we're gonna have in that fund because of what we forecasted last year for like interest. I don't know that, I think we may wind up having additional, cause interest rates have stayed relatively high.
So your principal payment is 441, 351.10 for next year?
Principal payments.
403.
403,000.
For what?
Just 403 even.
403 even.
Yeah.
Yep. And I put all these in that spreadsheet you sent me, so I can adjust them as we discuss and then just send you the spreadsheet.
Cause I gotta plug them into this.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Alright.
So that's where we are there. And then I guess maybe we just kinda go through, I mean, maybe high level, I know we're in a bit of a flux, you know, with the direction of the department, at least mildly, right? Like,
Yeah.
normally we would have chief
Right.
here,
You're
kind of
talking about helping us through this, right?
correct. I don't know what your thoughts
So,
are on
yeah,
like anything big initiatives, things that would be maybe significantly different than what we've done this year.
Let me hit on the bond fund first before we
Okay.
go on to anything else, but I'm all for paying off the bond fund, but part of me feels like the voters approved the bond fund to pay for the building, they also approved an operating levy to provide operating funds. And I feel, I don't know, I feel like it might, I'm afraid, I'm afraid might not be the right word, but I feel like it might not be appropriate to take money from the operating fund to pay off the bond. I wanna pay off the bond too, but you see what I'm saying? We got, voters approved a bond for, they approved that, and then they approved the operating. It's two separate things.
Yeah,
And as you look down in the future, that operating fund, the levy expires,
sure.
and if we don't renew it, then we gotta talk about staffing and that kind of stuff.
Oh, 100%.
So I'm just
Yeah.
looking into the future, 3, 4, 5 years, like, should we reach into the operating fund and pay off the bond, or should we, just run its course? And we can still pay it off, I think, a year early, but,
Yeah, and yes.
and like you said, we don't need to decide this right
Correct.
now.
And that's I think the big thing
But,
for me was, as we go through this process and just knowing what may happen with the initiatives that have been put in front of the budget commission with kind of their
Right.
newly highlighted focus on, making sure that
Tax revenue.
carryovers aren't too high.
Yeah.
I just wanna preserve our options.
Yeah.
Cause like you said, there's pros and cons for both. We can always look at, in I guess it would be 2028, we wouldn't need to collect the levy at the full amount, cause we will have paid off, we will have significant reserves, so we wouldn't need to, we could look at, either paying it off early,
Yeah.
or reducing that levy to the necessary amount or close to it,
Right.
so that there isn't a residual, cause ultimately, I'm not sure, I'm sure it happens all the time,
Yeah.
right, but like,
If we overcollect.
well, exactly, right, cause the levy was passed for paying off the building, you have to use it for paying off the building, well, what if it collects more than
Yeah.
what we need, even if
Right.
it's a couple of dollars, like, that's why we have that residual in the police fund, right, we'll talk about that on the township side. So I just wanna make sure that whatever we need to communicate to the county to justify that carryover, we're preserving that option so that we can analyze it again
Right.
next year. It's not something that we'll have to make a decision on before,
Right.
the end of next year, so. Alright, anything? Okay.
So, yeah, onto the rest of the fire department, like you said, it would, with the transition, we don't have a clear plan, I guess I should say, on where the department's going.
Right.
Everybody talks about the old tanker that's out there. They say it's a safety hazard. We're putting 20, 21, 22-year-olds in that tanker occasionally to drive it, and they say it's a liability. I'm not advocating that we replace a tanker, but I don't know why we have it. If it's a liability and we could
Well,
get
that's fair.
sued, we should take the keys from it and sell it, or whatever we gotta do. But if we need a tanker, that's something we should talk about, but I don't think we should make any plans until we get a chief.
No, I would agree
Yeah.
with that, and I mean, just
So-
to,
From a fire department perspective, I think we just continued the course of what we've been doing in the past couple of years.
okay, well, just to kind of put it into perspective, this past year, general fund appropriations for 2026 were $1,281,739.23. Based on that, if we spend to that without exceeding it, and tax collections come in at what they were projected, right? So over collection or under collection could affect this number. But the general fund for the fire district should be sitting at $1,358,932.37 at the end of the year. between the two levies, the operating and the existing continuing operating and the new one that was passed, we should pull in another 1.3 next year. Plus, I took our projected EMS revenues from this year, reduced them by 10%, just to be conservative on the budgeting, which would be another 128. So that would leave the fire district with almost $2.8 million for next year. So, now, that's also not accounting for the 385 that we've already committed to spend
Okay.
for the ambulance that was ordered last year. And then again, so if we run next year's budget at roughly what we ran this year's at, we should be sitting at about 1.5 million carryover for 2028, to start 2028. So what I did is the only real changes, because I agree 100% with what you mentioned about, we're the calendar isn't helping us with this process. Actually had this debate with somebody earlier today. Figuring out what we're gonna spend next year is a big part of this process, but more so than anything, it's analyzing the carryovers and making sure that what we're collecting on tax revenues is actually needed, so that we're not over collecting. We're going to be tweaking the budget, right? Right now, we're trying to forecast what we're gonna spend 6 to 18 months from now.
Right.
And contracts get renewed, interest rates change, utility rates change. We're gonna do we're tasked with trying to forecast those the best that we can, but no matter how meticulous we are with this budget, there's gonna be some ebb and flow. We're gonna overestimate, underestimate. So the only real changes that I made to what we had appropriated this year is, I know we're gonna talk about it later, and not because it's necessarily something that I think we absolutely have to commit to, but I think we've already kind of had the conversation that replacing Chief Kavanaugh might come with a bit of a cost. A greater expense than what we've had, just because we were fortunate that his situation, even though it was a full-time position, he didn't take benefits. That doesn't mean that the next chief won't. So what I did is we have the salary line item that we use for paying chief and the assistant chief. This past year, we had appropriated 116. We're on pace to be well below that, but I think for now, just because we may have to increase that to a degree, I just rolled that up to 155 to give us plenty of
So
room.
that's chief and assistant.
That's where we pay chief, that's where we're paying Brian and now Rob, and then Tim Holzman. We're paid out of
Yeah,
that.
So
So it
Tim,
happens to cover
the chief
both
and the
their salaries.
assistant, yeah, both salaries, okay.
And I have 117,399.29, I'm not sure.
Well, this
I
is the
thought that
spreadsheet
figured,
you
yeah.
sent me. I don't think I changed anything, but what do you have for this year you're talking about?
For the salaries for them, 117,399.29.
How is this number different? Well, I have 116 on my spreadsheet, so I don't know.
Oh, you're looking at 2024?
That could be.
No, mine says
2024
the same as Sherry as well.
Yeah, but 2024 was
2024 was
116. What are you
116.
looking at?
Well, I've got whatever number, I don't think it was.
It's on the second page.
Yeah.
No, I know, but, this is the spreadsheet you sent me, Sherry. There was just, appropriation status report.
Right.
So I'm just pulling off the numbers that were in there. So I don't know, maybe we had something got keyed in incorrectly on that. Or, let me just double check something here. Where is that?
That's right about where you've done this.
Administrative salaries, yeah.
Yeah, 117. 39929.
Okay, this is the township, not the fire district. That's why.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That will do it. Because somebody decided to do it out of order today.
Yeah, on your spreadsheet, are you looking at 2024 or are you looking at 20?
I don't have
Oh, you don't
years,
have
I just have
dates.
final
Oh.
appropriations, which I assume were this year's, so. Yeah, that's weird. This number doesn't match any of them, so I don't know if maybe I might have changed it, I guess. But yeah, again, mine doesn't match any of the three.
What did you
Exactly.
have, 116?
I had 116, 455, 57.
Okay, so I'm thinking the reason why that is higher
Cause
is
there's a
because
current reserve for
there was a
encumbrance.
reserve for encumbrance
There
from
you go.
last year, that's why.
Cause you,
Okay, but
yeah,
your number's right, really, though.
alright,
Okay.
so that explains that.
I'm looking at the
So
appropriation.
you wanna
slips.
take it up to 100?
Well, I just- Like I said,
Yeah, no, I
we
think that's a
will,
good
we will
idea.
revisit, but I just think
Yeah.
now when we're telling the budget commission what we may spend, you know, we wanna, I feel like we should be on a little bit, not ridiculous, but like be somewhat conservative.
Conservative, yeah.
Slightly overestimate what we may need
Mhm.
to spend, because again, you know, we're not trying to misrepresent what we're gonna do, but I mean, there is, we pay Tim 32.5 right now, I think it is,
Yeah.
35, something, but around there,
Yeah.
you know, and realistically, you know, in looking at competitive chief salaries, I mean, depending on the candidates we get in and what they bring to the table, I could see that range being anywhere from, you know, 90 to 120, you know, somewhere, you know, when you factor in especially benefits and stuff like that potentially. So just having that cushion and to look at what it looks like, right? Like,
Yeah.
is that sustainable for?
Chief would've jumped anyway as of today up to nearly 80,000 anyway.
Well, right, exactly.
So we've gotta stop, yeah.
Right, so that was really the only major change I think I made. Everything else, I pretty much rolled through, at close to the same numbers. And so I came up with a, budget for 2027 spend of 1,319,676.16. And that keeps us pretty much on par with the same, spend for staffing, with the exception of, obviously, you know, leadership.
You said numbers.
1,319,676.16. And then, like I said, for the majority of the line items, I just transferred over what we budgeted this year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I think, again, like we talked about, right, I don't foresee at this moment any major changes
Yeah.
in the short term. That being said, get a new chief in, let them assess the situation. You know, we do have, obviously, you know, we talked about reserve planning, you know, just doing it in-house, right?
Right.
Get an assessment of the apparatus. What, you know, do we have something in the building that's a liability that we need to replace? If so, obviously that becomes a new priority.
Right.
You know, again, we are fortunate, you know, that the voters did approve the levy that gives us the flexibility to address some of those if we need to, because obviously any type of equipment ordering is gonna take a number of years to get in, right? It's not like we can just go pick it up off a lot somewhere,
Right.
most likely.
So that number you gave us
Mhm.
is only about 16,000 more than what we were carrying for last year, or current year.
I think, let me see here, yes. 319, it's probably right around 40,000 more total.
Okay.
Let me see where the,
So what you change that salary to, 150?
155,
155.
I mean, that's, like I said, that's probably aggressive,
Yeah,
but
but-
like higher than it needs to be, but,
Right, but if that's 155, this year we budgeted for 117, that's, what is that?
35, a 35 buffer.
What did you have for your, total expenditures for this year, 1.303,
Total expenditures,
26?
Yeah, I guess that's,
well, my total final, well, actually, hold on, cause you said what I should probably do based off this spreadsheet, what we just talked about is add in reserve for encumbrance. So when you take the encumbrances in, I've got 1,551,058.36. So actually probably a little bit less than what we've little bit less than what we actually earmarked for this year.
For expenditures?
Yeah. Well, Sherry, cause you said basically with the way that this, spreadsheet that you dumped out, the reserve for expenditures going to what was appropriated as well, right?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, so actually we probably do need to roll those numbers up just a tiny bit.
So what is the one?
Cause some of them, like right now, some of the contracted services, I actually rolled back down. Like, some of them are showing zero in the final appropriation, cause she's already reserved the amount for encumbrances, probably because the bills already come in.
So, like right here, where it's
Yeah,
1303,
133, yeah.
so that's on your appropriation reports, it's
Yeah.
that plus the reserve for, that's what carried over. Usually it's like OPERS and
Okay.
state and local taxes, federal taxes. So, because you don't pay those till after the month flips, so if you take that and you add that to that, that
You get
comes
the
up to that.
133, but where's he getting the 1.5?
That I don't know.
If you take,
That's why
I'm going off of the appropriation status report that Sherry sent as of June 2nd.
And what columns are you at?
Final appropriations and current reserve for encumbrances,
in general.
in general, yep.
Those two.
No,
She's
not
at
current reserve,
reserve for
we have to do
encumbrances
the
at
first
12/31.
reserved. So the reserve for encumbrance at 12/31 plus the final appropriation is 1,303,239.27. The current reserve is just basically purchase orders that are opened against,
Okay, well, yeah, cause I have nothing in the reserve for encumbrances on 12/31 on this spreadsheet. So,
21,005, it should, did that come through in the Excel spreadsheet?
oh, wait, hold on a second, what is this column? Hold on, you got oh, no, no, right, that's the adjustment, sorry, hold on. There's two reserve for encumbrances files.
Yeah, there's one and there's
Yep,
a
yep, yep. So, when you add those two numbers together, you get,
1,303,239.27.
I get 1,745, 688.86. Oh wait, hold on, that includes the bond fund. Let me try this, let's do it this way. You said 1.3, that's gonna probably be about right. 1,303, 239.27.
That sounds a lot better.
There we go, okay. So, the way to adjust this would be here. Equals this.
So that's why we increased salaries 38,000, but overall it's only going up 16,000, that's where I'm unclear on.
Hold on, let me see, yeah. Then there's probably just a formula error here, let me get this cleaned up. Let's do this. Alright, let's see if this number looks a little better to you, Nick. I now have 1,340,830,998 in the general. Yeah, so that's
1,340,000.
40, 50. How does that go up 59 though? Oh, could I put the wrong number in here? Hold on. Cause you said the final number should include the reserves, that's why. 1,303, yeah, so there you go, 37.
37,600,
Yeah.
should be, yeah, so it should be somewhere around 1,341.
You mean for next year?
Yeah.
I got 1,319.
3.
Is that, hold on, no, sorry. We just recalculated those formulas and I didn't update the spreadsheet, so give me 1 second here. 1,340,
1,340.
839.98. And that leaves everything the exact same with the exception of just bumping up, the salary line for chief and assistant chief.
Right, so one thing that I think Rob just sent us an email, I don't remember if it was yesterday or today, but Seville right now we share our software,
The ESO,
payroll software. Seville's bailing out.
Okay.
And I don't know if we're just gonna pay for it all ourselves, or if there's a different software that we can share with them or somebody else or whatever.
What do we use the ESO software for at the moment?
I think that's what he does when he does his spreadsheets, when he sends them
Yeah,
to
it's
us.
all their payroll.
That's what he's using, but I
Payroll,
honestly, the other day it's an
scheduling.
Excel
I don't know
spreadsheet, I'm not really
Maybe
sure
Rob
why.
didn't send it to everybody, he sent it maybe just to you.
I thought we were all on there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay, I hadn't seen anything from Rob today.
Actually, it was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday he did. I just sent it to Sherry, just to Sherry and me.
Which is fine.
He sent it to me by itself. I
Yeah,
realized he did
that's
it,
not an
so.
issue, definitely something that we should have on the radar, you know, cause obviously it's not,
I'll
that was a
forward
pretty
it to you.
significant expense, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Even our share was,
I
Pretty
can't
hefty.
remember- Yeah, I can't remember what that is.
It was.
well, actually, hold on, it's,
$1,000 a year or something?
I could, well, I don't have that computer up.
hold on, ESO, it's, our half was almost $8,000,
$8,000, okay.
so,
16.
yeah. So definitely something that we wanna evaluate, if it's necessary, you know,
So should we just throw that in there for now and if we can throw that extra?
we can, yeah.
We can always do that one, whatever you want.
Well, no, I
Yeah,
mean,
just-
I think that's a big
Just
enough,
because we don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
Like, we might be able to get a better deal somewhere where we're not spending 16,000 or.
no, but again, I'd rather, we could be in a situation where, you know, we have to bite the bullet for a year to
Yeah.
figure out like how to transition and not lose, you know, a service or functionality, so
Yeah.
we should prepare for it, and then we'll work on addressing it, that way, but budget for worst case scenario, I guess.
Yeah.
So that would be, 1,348, 936.48.
348. 96.
Just on a side note, the workman's comp, we got the second batch coming back.
Oh,
Reimbursement
So right now we have $80,654
coming back.
credited, yeah, so I emailed him and asked him to
Special
send it to us, and he said it has to go to our phone number, it's over 25 minutes.
Sure.
But we'll get it.
Okay, and that's that was most of the fire district side, or was that all?
They took a big hit on most of it, yeah. so
Because
I
they were
just
the
gotta
ones that were
sit down.
being misbilled.
Their rates like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So that, most of that, I would assume is gonna go back into the fire.
Okay, so let me get that saved. Any other comments or discussion on the
No, I don't.
fire district
What was
side?
that final number? 1348.
1,348, 936.48,
936.
and that is the general fund only.
Okay.
And then Sherry, I think, you know, when we submit that to them, however you do it with the notes, I mean, I think we wanna notate, obviously, one, the bond fund situation, you know, we wanna reserve the ability to, the option to potentially either, you know, retire that bond early, or potentially reduce collections in 2028.
Well, when I'm ready to send it, I'll have you come up and we'll just
Okay.
do it together, so
Yep.
we, all the work.
And then we
is-
probably wanna throw a note on there that we have, and I don't know, cause I didn't see it, kinda, we've discussed this, right, like how did we earmark the 345 that we've
Oh, for the ambulance?
committed to the ambulance, and it's not currently showing encumbered anywhere.
Right, it's cause we,
Well, right, and I'm not saying like that we should have or shouldn't have, I'm just
No.
saying like, but that's something that's worth putting a note on there that like, hey, it's showing that we've got more, but we've already spent it, it's just that we haven't actually paid it out, but we've committed it, we're under contract to pay that, so we
we
wanna
can
make sure
always
that that's in
create
range.
capital outlay.
Okay.
And put it in there, and just leave it sit there that way.
That doesn't cause you any issues like from year to year, cause we probably won't get the invoice until,
No, it
Next
just
year.
carry over every year until it's paid out.
Okay.
Cause there's a couple funds in there and we can get rid of, honestly, in both sides, township and.
okay. Alright, so then, on the township, guess I need to tweak this just a little bit with that information, because it'll be the same thing here, but, obviously on the township side, for 2026, we appropriated 1919,021.89. Should be what everybody has, right? Double check. Of course. We don't have a good total, yeah, it's all done by fund individually, so. Alright. Well,
Appropriation.
why, let me take that back away.
Okay, just-
Alright, yeah. Let me see that real quick. Well, this was also probably prior to, we added, 15,000 to cemetery and 115 additional to road and bridge. I still have a little bit bigger number, but it's real close. Actually, what do you have? You have 1,808?
637.
Yeah, okay, no, I do have that in here, so. So I guess the big question here, Carrie, where do we stand on, I mean, you're gonna have, nothing's gonna fluctuate real big on the town, like, for the general operations, right? Our board compositions are staying roughly the same. You know, the elected official salaries are fixed statutorily. From a salary standpoint, the only thing that, you know, we have to discuss is, you know, potentially, expanding the role for the zoning secretary, potentially expanding the administrative assistant, and then also kind of where we wanna go with zoning based on some of the information. And I know those are kind of bigger questions, but along the same lines of, you know, allowing for growth. I did, you know, I left everything pretty much the same for, electeds. The one thing that I did switch is, we had appropriated, 34.5 for the township secretary, or administrative assistant. It's just listed as secretary in the thing, so. You know, but I think we wanna potentially give ourselves a little additional buffer there, whether it winds up being for additional admin staff, whether we look at, you know, potentially going with a full-time administrative assistant. We've talked about just different ways to attack staffing the building, whether it's more hours for the zoning inspector, keeping office hours, whether the candidate that we find is more of a flex hours when they're available, but then we shift some of that responsibility onto. I don't wanna speak for the other two of you, this is a good opportunity to kind of maybe have this conversation, but, you know, in getting feedback with residents, I think that there is a significant value to finding a way, regardless of who it is or how we, you know, how we slice it, being able to kind of man the administration building 8 to 5 Monday through Friday pretty consistently. Like I said, there's a number of ways we can do that, but all of them are gonna end with increased staffing costs for administration, whether it's, you know, again, the administrative assistant, zoning secretary. And just to kind of give some high level, we've talked about this in the past, you know, with the reevaluation process and inside millage increases, we do have the buffer there, right? I mean, without increasing other tax levies. We're projected to start next year with about $632,000 in the general fund. We can increase general fund expenditures by almost $100,000 without eating into that reserve because of the increased inside millage and collection rates. So again, not advocating for increasing overheads by that much, but just saying that, like, with the growth of the township, the tax revenues have grown on that side of things. The question is, how do we, you know, allocate those resources, you know, and one of the areas that's become pretty apparent to me over the last year or so has been, you know, consistent feedback from the residents that they would like to have some more availability to be able to stop in versus trying to match it up with the 3 days a week that we're currently, you know, manning that facility.
And I don't know how if we're gonna get audited this year or not, I'm not sure, but, so that will probably trickle in next year too, because it's already July almost, and they haven't even contacted us yet.
Right.
Which they haven't contacted the dispensary, so I'm not sure what the state's thinking at this point.
Where's that from?
Well, I allocated 10 grand this year.
Yeah, I think 11, was it 10 or 11,000?
That's gonna be a
yeah.
lot more guaranteed, I mean,
Okay.
it's gonna be a lot.
So we also did save $10,000-11,000 in health insurance.
Yep.
So that, yep.
But by the time we do our permanents and even our temporaries, I mean, this is just like a dart game at this point. We're just kind of thinking what might happen, so when you get towards, and you get your carryover at the end of the year, and then you'll know, by then they have firm numbers from the county. And so, I normally do basically what Justin said, I don't tweak it too much,
Yeah.
because you don't know at this time.
You want
At this point of the game, you really don't know, unless you already know, okay, oh, we're gonna buy an ambulance next year, but we don't know that.
Yeah.
So unless you have some big expenditure, really things just kind of are status quo through the year,
Right.
then really there isn't any sense until we have better ideas of what we're looking at.
So if we're thinking about increasing hours at the admin building, then are we looking at adding about 25,000? Or
I don't know that it would even, well, yeah, I
just
mean,
to be safe in case,
ultimately-
you know, however we do this?
yeah, I mean, for now, I put an extra 10.5 over what we have budgeted for this year in the administrative, assistant secretary one.
Okay.
And then, again, we can reallocate, but just to fix the numbers, I upped the, zoning, cause zoning tends to be part of what's getting the most, I guess, strained with growth applications for new permits,
Yeah.
the increase, you know, nuisance and enforcement side of things. I had upped that from 31.6 to 50, that would cover, you know, both potentially zoning and zoning secretary, are paid out of the zoning salaries. Our boards are paid out of the separate positions. So overall, it's about a $29,000 increase for the roles that
Yeah,
would,
say that again about the zoning, you raised zoning from what to?
from 31.6 to 50. And I guess actually, our zoning salaries is actually probably not that even of a number, it's probably like 31.9. But some of these columns are a little split, but, it basically takes the general fund projected spend for next year to 501,877.45. This year, it was 412,709. And again, this isn't set in stone.
Right, right.
This is more just kind of like a,
It's a good contingency though, isn't it?
well, it's good to be able to look at it from a standpoint of, you know, is it sustainable over time?
Yeah.
You know, to Nick's point, you know, we restructured the benefits package, we found a more cost-effective way of delivering the same benefits to the employees. So that saved the township some money,
Yeah.
you know.
What was that total that you came up for 2027?
For 2027, for the general fund, yep, is 501,877.45.
Justin, on the revenue side, are we moving forward, moving the millage? Is that something we have to do for?
We had talked about it
for the
last year.
budget?
Well, technically, we just have to have it in before the end of the year. But it would be cleaner to probably do it, you know, with this, at this time, right? So that there isn't a bunch of messing around with the, with reissuing certificates. We attempted last year, the board attempted last year to go, we currently split our inside millage, 1 mil to general, 2 to road and bridge. You know, the only downside to that is, once money goes into road and bridge, it's stuck there, it can only be spent there. Why it was done that way in the past, there's several different reasons, but, you know, I I don't know if,
We don't need to get into it.
well, yeah, opinions have changed, but in talking with the auditor now, they said that there's nothing that restricts us from being able to change it if we want to. And I think if that had been the information that the auditor's office had provided to past boards, I think they would have, not that we're bound by what would have been done in the past, but I think they would have made the same decision. Last December, the previous board voted to change the inside millage to 3 mills in general, nothing to road and bridge. It didn't get submitted in time for them to process it before the end of the year, the next deadline being this, this
Right.
December, November. So we've got time to discuss it, but this is, to Sherry's point, probably the right time to do it so that they don't have to
Yeah.
redo that language. What are your guys' thoughts? I mean, my take on it was always, if we put it in the general fund, it just gives us the most flexibility. It's still on us to manage it properly, and if we need to allocate it to cover a road project, we can pay for road projects out of the general fund. We just can't do anything other than road projects out of road and bridge, and that's why, if you look, this year, we started 2026 with 3.7 million, just under $3.7 million available to us between carryover, expected tax collection, and other revenues to the township, right? But of that 3.7 million, only $1 million of it was in the general fund. The rest of it was in motor vehicle license, gas tax, road and bridge, police, all in restricted funds that limit our ability to have that flexibility to allocate resources where we need them. So again, almost 2/3, more than 2/3 of the resources available to the township were kind of tied up in specific allocations.
Yeah.
And I just think that giving ourselves and future boards, I mean, again, future boards can make a change if they want to, but that flexibility to have maximum flexibility with our budget just seems like a no-brainer to me, but, I guess the flip side is if you can't be disciplined with your saving,
Right.
then you can make the argument that it needs to stay in road and bridge, but.
Sherry, do you have any benefit of?
I agree with the concept that once it's in the general fund, it's easier, because like you said, once
Yeah.
you're in there. So for 26, for our property taxes for road and bridge, we're $631,000, and $350,600 for general, so that is a significant difference between what they're getting and what the general fund is getting.
Yeah.
I mean, all their vehicles are relatively new, I don't see where, if something came up, you can always pay anything out of general.
I love general, right.
As I say, like, the only downside is, in the past, it's been easy to just say, hey, look, you didn't have to really think about road projects as much because there was so much money kind of like stuck in there that we couldn't do anything else with. It will require a little more discipline by the board to not just say, oh, well, that's where the extra money is. No. The bulk of the money will wind up being in the general fund. We have to continue to plan, because that was the one kind of question, as we plan the budget for next year, where do you see the road projects? Are we expecting a
We
similar?
don't have any for next year, no, none of them are aware of at the moment, I did go with Matt with this. So we shouldn't be spending as much on them this time of year. Matt was trying to call to see where all the roads have been done over the last 10-15 years to see where we are with our road projects, but we're not predicted currently to have any for next year.
Okay. Should we look to see
Yeah.
if we need to, if it would make sense to pull something? I guess my only thought is, it's always good to defer if you can, if it's not gonna cost us more money in the long run, but.
Defer a project.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is like, if we don't put a road project on next year, does it mean that we have to do twice as many the following year?
Right.
We need to know what those are. Not saying that we necessarily need to force a project earlier than it needs to be done, because you wanna get as much useful life out of them.
Yeah.
But I think we need to work, over the next month or
Yeah.
two to really get that assessment on, what roads are gonna be done where, and we need to probably have a solid 5 to 10 year.
That's what we're working on at the
Okay.
moment, because what we were looking at is the roads that we're doing right now, obviously won't have to be done for another probably, you've got to start thinking about 5 to 6 years' time,
Okay.
because they should have a 7-year cycle, if we don't have any bad winters or any major things going on the roads. And we've got,
Or they don't put hydrants in it after you want to.
yeah, exactly, thanks, yeah.
The timing couldn't have been any better for that, huh?
So there's kind of, I think if we were to factor in 100,000, maybe if we go into then, but, because that's what this so far, I think it's cost us so far, I think, hasn't it, for this year?
What total is gonna wind up being like, well, we paid for the slag outside of it, but the total road projects this year were like 240
Yeah.
total. With everything that went into it, not just paying the
But
contractors.
we had,
but the-
yeah, we had a lot more
Right.
this time round, with it, because we were hitting 4 or 5 rows at once.
Okay.
I think it's safe to put a small amount aside just in case, because you don't need, can't predict what if we have a major disaster or something goes on our roads, but, as far as Matt and I are aware, next year doesn't have a life cycle on us yet.
Okay. Well, without having a solid road plan, I had basically just taken the road department 10% increase across the board.
Yeah, I
Now,
get
obviously, I
that.
think we're overestimating if we're gonna cancel off road projects, but we can adjust that,
Yeah.
for final appropriations.
Did you factor in the mowing and things like that then?
Yeah, cause we had
Yeah.
budgeted,
Oh, I
we had
didn't put it
budgeted
in,
for
right.
that, yeah. So I just took everything in road and bridge, added 10% to this year's,
Yeah.
kind of for a preliminary budget, unless you think we
No,
should
that's
roll
what I
them
did,
down.
yeah, no, that's what I did as well.
And then, on the, police levy, it's gonna be the same $400,000 contract.
No,
Yeah.
it's gonna go up $20,000, he said. I talked to Chief Kenny.
It can't.
Well, what we pay this year in December will be 400,000.
Right.
But what we pay next year, it renews in 27. What we pay next year will be 420,000.
No,
Yes.
400. The 5-year contract's for 400 a year.
Correct.
We're up next year, 2027.
Yes.
We pay at the end of the year for the year.
For the next year.
No. We pay at the end of the year for the year.
For the year.
It's a great deal, but yeah, that's the way it works, because we get the tax collection throughout the year, then we pay them at the end of the year
Okay.
for the year. I know what you're talking about, and those are the same preliminary conversations that I had with Lieutenant Markham and Chief Kenny last year, kind of like when we were talking about it, and there is some talk about,
So it's not-
potentially escalating, but yes, right, for next year, what we're gonna be paying in 2027 will just be the 400.
Okay.
And then we'll have to
The
discuss
following year.
potential, we'll sit down with the police department
Yeah.
probably sooner rather than later.
Right.
Because that'll be something that the board will wanna discuss too, on how we wanna approach it next year, whether we wanna present it, the renewal to the township early in the year, in the front, in March, April, May, whenever they do the spring ballot, or whether we do it in November, cause obviously, whatever will be, I don't wanna put too many definitives in here, right, but we have an existing police contract. It's been decided by the voters. I don't think anybody here is gonna make the decision to unilaterally kill that. We don't have the
No.
authority to renew it. We'll put it to the voters next year, but to your point, yes,
So it's
the
paid
financials will
after-
be
I was
different.
Yeah, I was led to believe that you paid and then you got the service, not you get the
Yeah,
service.
no,
and then-
We are the
we get lucky, like I don't,
Yeah,
I'm
let's
not-
keep that going.
correct. But it allows us to collect the levy throughout the year, and then we pay them at the end of the year.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, nice of the city to do that.
Exactly, so again, but to your point, we will have to renegotiate, or at least figure out what the renewal will be, because I can't imagine that they're gonna renew the contract at the same.
Yeah, he already told me it's gonna be increased and we'll have a rider that increases it.
Each
This-
annually?
This
Yeah.
one was locked for 5 years.
Right. I think the only question will be, like, they'll present that to, cause it needs their city council needs to
Yeah.
approve it, so we'll have to have that conversation
Right.
probably sooner rather than later, so if they wanna put something together,
Yeah, I don't know, what do you think the timing is? I was thinking the beginning of the year.
yeah, I guess my take on it would be the sooner they wanna commit to something,
Okay.
they're not gonna, the sooner we can get them locked into some numbers, the
Yeah.
better those numbers are gonna look,
Right.
in my opinion,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's like,
I mean, I guess we might hit a
whether you
things
win
get
the
cheaper cycle, but haven't seen one of those in my lifetime, so I'm not gonna hold my breath. So, with all of that, I've got, township appropriations next year of $1,991,367.35. And I do think that that is probably a slightly high estimate on what we would actually spend. But again, that does leave us with actually an increase in carryover, well, slight decrease in carryover from 26 to 27. Any additional thoughts?
Nope.
Alright. Well, then with that, that's everything for the special meeting agenda.
make a motion to, and to close the
To
special.
adjourn, to adjourn the special meeting.
Yeah, to adjourn.
Alright, do I have a second?
Second thought.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Alright, so the special meeting is adjourned, we'll take a short break and we will start in a few minutes. Weather rating.